So again, preliminary information is that the former president was on the golf course playing golf, being guarded by his Secret Service detail, that shots were fired coming from the direction of a tree line, we are told, that Secret Service returned fire towards that shooter and pursued an individual, and shots were exchanged, and that witnesses say an individual was seen fleeing, apparently in a car. A description was given and put out. License plate readers were searched, and a car stop was made by local law enforcement where an individual is being detained. We do not know whether that individual is the shooter or just someone who fit the description or was in a similar car. They were in the process of trying to get witnesses who saw the individual who was shooting and fleeing to make that identification. And of course, they're investigating that individual and his background. The gun that was recovered with a backpack, and we are told a GoPro camera. So those things are all going to have extreme relevance. What's in the backpack? What other things may be there that could be evidence? Additional ammunition, perhaps maps or directions. What is that weapon? That will be the job of ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, to determine the serial number on that weapon and trace it at least to the point of sale, and then at that retailer they can find out to whom it was sold and when. Florida gun laws are relatively lax in that once you obtain a weapon, you are able to sell it to other people. So they'll be going through that to see if it connects to the gunman. As we saw in the last attempt on President Trump's life, the gun actually led them to the identification of the gunman because its point of sale was to his father and then to him. So a lot of wheels turning right now.
Yeah, all very fascinating.
I would also say that a good deal of this reporting also comes from Kristen Holmes, who of course, covers the Trump campaign and all of his movements with us, and was confirmed by my sources. So we're getting this from a couple of directions.
Exactly, and she's doing additional reporting, so she'll be joining us again very soon as well. So back to the backpack and the AK-47 that were recovered. Well, we just had the conversation about a warrant would be needed, most likely to best preserve and protect what information is garnered from the vehicle. In this case, it was left behind, if I heard you correctly the first time around. It was left behind. There wouldn't be a warrant needed, but there could instead be a search conducted right away in that backpack, and that kind of tracing of information of the AK-47 can happen immediately, correct?
It can, but they're going to be very careful in the handling of these things. I mean, depending on where that gun was found. Right now, we are operating on the information that it was found near the scene. If it was found in the car, that would be one further thing tying that individual to the alleged crime, but that's not what we have right now. And again, as Chief Ramsey pointed out, and Chief Ramsey's been around a long time and he's lived this experience, the first story is never right, but we believe that the information we're getting from our sources, which is the flash reporting coming from law enforcement on the scene, is going to be a pretty close composite to how this unfolded. That gun will have to be processed for DNA, for fingerprints. So what the practice that I've always used at the scene, that my colleagues always used at the scene, is if the gun fell with the serial number facing up, to take a picture of it, and then not to handle that weapon at all, because you don't want to add any biological material or disturb it before the lab people get to it. You want to give it to them as pristinely as possible.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to bring in Senior Justice Correspondent Evan Perez, who's with us now. You have more information on someone detained?
That's right, Fred. The authorities there, Secret Service on the scene, were able to detain the person. Now, obviously, as as John making reference, a lot of this is very early information from law enforcement. A lot of times it's, it's just a heat of the moment, and they're trying to report what they have at the scene. But at this point, what they're saying is that they've detained a person. Now, they believe this is a person who was connected to this scene, and the reason why there were shots fired from the Secret Service side is they believe that this person was poised to fire shots, perhaps in the direction of the former president. They were trying to prevent this from happening, and so they obviously, given everything that has happened in the last few weeks, they're obviously very much more on guard and making sure they are aware of any possible threats. And so that's what they decided to do here. We don't know if that person was struck by anything, but now begins the harder work of trying to figure out everything about this person, what, if any, connection they had to any political views that could have influenced what happened. All of those things, the motivations, and how long they've been planning this, all of that stuff is, of course, now a big part of this investigation. And keep in mind, down in Florida, where the former president lives and where he spends a lot of his time, other than in New Jersey, his club there, he has a great deal of protection. And so that's one of the things that seems to have come into play here, is the extra layers of protection, especially when he's on his home golf course.
Well, Evan Perez, thank you so much. If you and folks at home are just now joining us, we want to let you know the breaking news that we're following. Former President Donald Trump's campaign saying he is safe after gunshots were fired in his vicinity while he was on his golf course a short time ago, just after 2 o'clock Eastern time. We're learning that Trump was playing golf at the club, the Trump International Golf Club in Palm Beach, Florida, when this took place. Sources are telling CNN that officials believe the shots were intended for Trump and that an AK-47 was recovered near a tree line area there at the golf course. Law enforcement officials saying that a car was also stopped nearby in relation to the shots being fired. A press conference from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Secret Service will be taking place soon. Of course, we're going to continue to monitor it and take it live if we're able to do that. My law enforcement panel is back with me now. John Miller, Charles Ramsey, Steve Moore, Jonathan Wackrow. And, John, you made a great point about just tracing the serial number off that AK-47 in any way they're able to do that without compromising any evidence that is on there. How long might it take if they were able to retrieve that kind of serial number information without compromising any forensic evidence on that weapon before they're able to get a confirmed identity of the person who may have purchased it and any kind of activity that may have happened with that weapon?
So the gun tracing system that the ATF uses is computerized. They can trace that gun from the manufacturer to the store it was sold to. But that's where things can slow down, because they then have to go to that merchant. They have to get that merchant to open their books and say, here's this serial number. When did you see it? When did you sell it, and to whom? And that doesn't tell us if that person sold it to somebody who sold it to somebody. So it can be a time-consuming process, or it can unfold very rapidly. It's a Sunday. Is that store open? Are they there? It could take some time. But in the context that they have a description of a vehicle, they have a vehicle stopped, they have a possible person in custody who's being investigated to determine whether he was the person involved in this. The tracing of the gun might become less critical if that suspect turns out to be a good suspect in this case. If that suspect turns out to be not the person involved, then the tracing of the gun, of course, and all of this will happen simultaneously, becomes more critical.
Steve Moore, what about what you would see seemingly simple, cross-referencing of fingerprints? I know we talked about not compromising the weapon, but if you have someone detained, you have a vehicle, and possible fingerprints on this AK-47, might those be lifted right away with a cross-referencing or a comparison?
Well, the problem with fingerprinting the gun right away is if you do it quickly in order just to get fingerprints, you're possibly destroying DNA evidence and other evidence that would be crucial. The DNA is the stuff that's most perishable, while the fingerprints will survive a lot of handling. So that would be the last thing they'd want to pull off the rifle. So they're certainly going to try to avoid that. I mean, if the gun had, say, a scope or something like that, number one, it would tell you that he wasn't out plinking. It would also be a possible source where you could go to try to find a fingerprint which wouldn't compromise the rest of the whole gun. If it were my case, I wouldn't want them doing that. Because as Chief Ramsey pointed out, every shortcut you take now, and by shortcut, I don't mean illegal actions, but every avenue you take to allow you to obtain information without a warrant or without properly processing is evidence that is at risk when you go to trial.